I just want to raise the issue of the withdrawal of funding for TII's funding schemes. A number of national road schemes throughout the country have been impacted this year by very substantial funding uncertainty. So, to explain what's happening to the House, we've seen schemes, whether they're the N72 in my own constituency, in other parts of Cork, the N71, in Bantry, there's been schemes in Tipperary, in Wexford, in Roscommon and in Longford that have been prevented from being progressed because the funding has not been available as of the month of August of 2024. And essentially where we're at, just to update the House, the projects that are supposed to be done under pavement schemes by TII's programme in 2024, as of the end of August, 46 projects representing 66% of the annual workload of TII has not yet gone to tender. And this is, quite frankly, very, very bad management on the part of the Department of Transport, who are allowing TII to come forward with an annual budget that, quite frankly, is not funded. TII are a very good organisation. They have a great track record of delivering national road projects on budget and on time. To reference Dunkettle, to reference the N70 or the N22 scheme in Cork, and also the Ballyvourney-Macroom bypass. These projects were delivered on time, on budget. I think the Ballyvourney-Macroom scheme actually came in ahead of schedule. So as an organisation, they're definitely doing their job properly. They've shown time and time again in recent years that they are very, very adept at what they do. And what I'm trying to say here is that it's just unacceptable to me, as the party spokesperson in Transport in Fianna Fáil, and as a TD representing a constituency like Cork East, that this situation is allowed to persist because of what I feel to be greenwashing of the Department of Transport's budget by withdrawing funds that should be allocated to national road projects, whether that's maintenance, new road capital projects, and reallocating it to mobility projects, which we know there's €1 million a day being spent on cycling and walking, which is great. But my issue is that projects in my own constituency that have been planned and decided on to be done in the month of February of this year, we didn't reach the latter half of the year, and the funding is not there. And it creates an enormous political issue, as you would expect, and it's just not acceptable to me as a government politician. I also want to make the point that when it comes to other major schemes, we've seen the hold-up of the national road projects, including the Cork-Limerick motorway. It's a long way behind schedule, and that should be definitely be given the accelerator pedal within the Department of Transport. I'm concerned about the lack of progress on the Fermoy Main Street resurfacing, which is one of the projects that was held up. We have seen some announcements in recent times that this will be sorted out in this calendar year. I want to reiterate the need for that to happen. And finally, what I would reference is that we have two major schemes in the south section of the constituency. The N25 Middleton to Carrigtwohill scheme. I just want to recognise the Deputy Stanton's here beside me. Both of us have been raising the need for that to be done. And also the Castlemartyr and Killa bypasses are what's now termed by TII to be the Middleton to Youghal scheme. And these projects all need funding. They need capital in order to be progressed. And my message to the House and to the Minister for Transport, and I recognise that Minister Rabbitte is here today with us taking the question, is that why are you not funding the projects? To me, it has to be done, and unless it's done, these projects cannot progress. And in conclusion, there's more to this than infrastructure. It's about safety on our roads. It's about removing some of the most dangerous sections of roads in the country. The N25, very sadly, has seen a number of very dangerous car accidents, including a multitude of fatalities. And I feel an obligation here as a TD for that constituency to come in and to express the need for these schemes to be progressed. The N73 and N72 in North Cork are just as dangerous and are also in need of funding. So I'm asking the House that this issue will be looked into and that we'd see a solution to it.
Thank you, Laskin Corla. And I would like to thank the Deputy for raising the matter, and I'm taking it on behalf of Minister Ryan. The Minister for Transport has responsibility for overall policy and exchequer funding in relation to the National Roads Programme. Once funding arrangements have been put in place with Transport Infrastructure Ireland, or as you referenced, TII, under the Roads Act 1993 to 2015, and in line with the National Development Plan, the planning, design, improvement and upgrading of individual national roads is a matter for TII in conjunction with local authorities concerned. TII ultimately delivers the National Roads Programme in line with Project Ireland 2040, the National Planning Framework and the NDP. The Government has earmarked €5.1 billion for capital spending on new national road projects from 2021 to 2030 as part of the NDP. This funding will enable improved regional accessibility across the country as well as compact growth, which are key national strategic objectives. The funding will provide for the development of numerous national road projects, including the completion of projects which are already at construction stage and those close to it, as well as the development of a number of others. As the greater portion of this funding becomes available in the second half of the decade, this has meant that there is constraint on funding available for new projects in the period to 2025. However, approximately €412 million of Exchequer funding capitals were provided to the national roads through TII to local authorities in 2024. While there has been no reduction to the overall capital funding available for national roads in 2024 since the allocations were announced, a number of new road projects are facing funding pressures in 2024. This is due to a number of reasons, including the increased pace of delivery and land acquisition costs, as well as inflation and increased costs of material, which are higher than when originally estimates were calculated. The major new road projects face funding pressures include the N5 Balhadreen to Schram Road project, which is under construction, and the M28 Cork to Ringlin-Skinnick and Limerick to Foynes, including Adair bypass projects, which are approaching construction. A number of projects at an earlier stage in the development life cycle are also affected. In order to ensure the continued delivery of these important projects, TII proposed earlier this year to postpone some asset renewal works on the existing network until 2025 or as soon as possible thereafter. This is particularly the case where existing contracts are in place. In addition, some Greenway funding will be used to advance active travel infrastructure on the national road network, which would otherwise be funded from the roads budget. This will allow funding to be directed to new roads projects. These important projects are in line with the commitment of Government to invest in new roads infrastructure to ensure all parts of Ireland are connected to each other. They will also assist in removing traffic from our towns and villages, creating more livable communities. And it is too noted that the postponement of temporary and safety improvement schemes will not be affected by these measures. In fact, Minister Ryan is pleased to advise to the House that more recently TII has identified funding for a small number of these paused pavement improvement schemes which were identified as being in particular need of intervention. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank the Minister for the response, and I also acknowledge within it that obviously there has been reference to money spent. But what I'm here this morning to discuss is money that's not being spent, that's been allocated for expenditure in this calendar year. The situation as it stands is that normally in a calendar year, Transport Infrastructure Ireland's budget is agreed by its board with consultation of the Department of Transport, generally in the second week of December. That had been the case before this government came to power and before we had a Green Party minister in the Department of Transport. But since Eamon Ryan has taken office, Minister Ryan, we have seen the delay of this decision taking place up until the month of even halfway into the month of February, where you have a government state agency signing off on the annual transport budget 7 and 8 weeks into the new year. It's farcical. People know it, and those that work in this industry also know it to be the case. And it gives an indication that there is very serious issues with the allocations that are being signed off on. And what annoys me as a TD, it really gets under my skin quite frankly, is that you have this state agency approving a budget for expenditure in a calendar year that's subsequently not funded. Like, talk about a pie in the face for any government TD in a constituency later in the year where TI have to turn around and say, actually, we don't have the money to fund these projects because they're not getting the support from the Department of Transport. And I would question the level of engagement between Transport and the Department of Public Expenditure around their needs. And I think that's coming from a policy perspective from the Department of Transport's Minister. And I think this has to be addressed because ultimately towns like Fermoy, areas in constituencies of my own or national road schemes that people depend on to get to and from their daily place of work will ultimately suffer. And we've seen some very significant safety improvement schemes that have not progressed. As I've said to the House last Corda, 66% of the schemes have not been tendered as of August of this month. That's completely and utterly unacceptable.
Thank you, Deputy. So over the past 25 years, the Government of Ireland has invested heavily in our national roads network, which an extensive motorway system now in place, and the motor network has seen almost tenfold expansion since 2000. Due to the outlined funding constraints for national roads, a prioritisation exercise was necessary from the outset, and in line with the NDP and government policy, as Minister for Transport, he allocated national road funding for 2023 in a manner which sought to achieve the following key outcomes: protection and renewal of existing national and road network, progressing major projects in or near construction, progressing major projects which are pre-construction but well advanced in the development pipeline, and prioritisation any remaining funds for major projects which provide for local bypasses and compact growth in Ireland's towns and villages. The Department of Transport and TII engage on a regular basis on the National Roads Programme, and the Department is committed to the continued maintenance and renewal of the existing road network. The Programme for Government commits to full protection of essential road and public transport maintenance and upkeep budgets to ensure continued public safety and connectivity. It also commits to continued investment in new roads infrastructure to ensure that all parts of Ireland are connected to each other. In support of this, approximately 412 million, I'll say it again, in the Exchequer capital funding was allocated to the national roads for both protection and renewal and new roads in 2024. This has resulted in many improvements to the network, as demonstrated by the Dunkettle Interchange project, which was opened this year. Thank you, Deputy.